Morning, everybody. It's Cheryl again. It's now time to service the movement on that Seth Thomas adamantine clock that I finished the outside of the case on. And I've had this movement up on the stand for days now. And it's worked for the most part. Every once in a while it will stop and you can get it going again pretty easily. But you needed to figure out why it has stopped. And this is what I have figured out by having it on this test stand all these days and looking at it. See how this spring is unwinding? See how this spring is unwinding? There should be some stops behind here that push the spring outward. Like this little stop on this post right here. It can't go past it up into my gears. There's no such animal on this one. You'll notice it's pushed up and it's holding my bell arm from being able to go down. And it's pushing on this second wheel. It's all the way up to the lantern pinion hub on this second wheel. So with all that pressure from that spring on there, of course your clock's going to stop. And then I could walk by and move the clock and get the pendulum swinging again, and it would work again, you know. So I thought, okay, it probably needs bushings. It's getting locked up. This spring should not be unwinding this way, and so I don't know why it is, and that's what we have to investigate. So once I can see what I can do with this spring, some people would replace it. They would say it's got too much memory. If you buy an old clock and it's been wound for years and years and years, like, it's best if they're kind of left like this. If you're not going to use a clock, you let it wind down and then you store it that way. If you wind it up and you can't get it to run and then you store it that way, there's so much memory in the springs from years and years of being wound tight that this is what happens. So there's two options. You take the spring off, you flatten it out as much as you can and straighten it out and get it some spring back to it, or you replace this spring. So that's what we're going to have to do, is see what we can do with this spring over here. I'm tempted to see if I can get this to move out. I don't understand why it's so concentric and why there's no little stops. Like, I can see the little stop behind this post going through that way. And then the stop on the bottom is the arm that holds the front and the back of the plate together. There's a little stop right there to keep it from going that way. But there's nothing at the top to keep it, to make it want to push out into the case of the clock, make it disperse its energy in the right direction. So this is not how it was designed. And if all else fails, I could possibly switch these two springs. What I've read up on springs made at the turn of the century, the springs that weren't as good a quality, they didn't just get rid of them. They would put them on the strike side because it doesn't get used as much. So I don't, like, this spring may not be as good a quality. It may not hold up to the day-to-day wear and tear of the time side. So switching these springs in their location would be my last option, probably. But anyway, we'll see what we do when we get into it. So I took a little bell off of here just so I could get better access to this. And it really wants to be right there in the center. It doesn't like being off center. And that one pushes right out there, no problem. So we've got to check it out, see what's going on. Let's get some spring clamps on here. I've got a let-down key. It takes a number 5 for this one. Let's see if I can wind it up small enough to put a clamp on there. It's about to drop down enough to let my bell work. So I'm looking at it as it's winding, and it's still like super close over here and spread out more over here. It's not uniform. that's pretty uniform. I need to pick a clamp size. I got out the Mondos because it was so big, but that's going to be way too big. This is the next size down, and I got some vintage ones from a clock. Some tools that I bought. This was a set, a new set. This was the vintage set. They look about the same size, right? You put them up next to each other. The new set has a whole lot less metal on them than the old set. So this is going to hold it much more securely than this wide open thing. Let's see if I can get it on there. Doesn't look like it. Take this little guy off. But it's up under here, so to do that I gotta loosen that post where the spring is, and that lets it be loose. So let's try the newer set that's got more of a cutout. There we go. Alright, let's try the old set from this side. See, with that extra metal, it's just not going to fit nearly as easily around all my parts. So the new one it is. Find something to let this clicker go. Alright, the click spring is off of the click. Wind it up a little bit. And push your click off of your springs. And just let it down slowly in your hand. And get this in the middle before you get it too tight. You want your clamp in the middle of that spring. So we got one. I'll do the same thing to the other one. go in the middle. This is the first time I've taken this apart. When I cleaned it before, I didn't take it apart. And those are not bushings that have been put in before. I wasn't sure because of the way they looked, but they are not. So, take lots of good pictures before you start taking it apart, of course. Make sure you note where all your springs were attached before you took it apart. I took good pictures, close-ups of where all the springs were hooked on. And also which levers were on which posts and how they interacted with the cams and the pins on these two wheels. That's important to know when you're putting it back. I took all the wheels out and put these back in, put the screws on, 4 of them. I didn't put the middle one, I just put these 4, tighten them up so I could put my let-down key back on here, wind it up, slip these clamps off, and unwind it slowly with gloves, of course. Still managed to get my hand. But anyway, they're both unwound all the way. They do not appear to be the same size. This is the time side, and it seems a lot bigger than this side, but maybe it's already been replaced, I don't know. Alright, let's get these out of here and see if we need to do any bushings. With cleaning and stretching, I've got the springs equal now, so hopefully when I wind it up it's going to want to expand out the way it's supposed to. But this is the reason I haven't cleaned this yet. But 2 posts here, only 1 post here. If there was a post up here, it wouldn't be able to expand and get into my gears. So I don't know why. This is an early '89 model. It doesn't say '89, it just has 4.5 on there for the pendulum length. So maybe they changed it at a later date, but it really could use one more right over there. But anyway, I'm going to wind these back up, put the clips back on, and get all my parts cleaned besides these. I've been taking my time working on this, gotten it cleaned, put the time side back in after I polished the pivots and worked on some wear. There was a good bit on my Verge pallets, and I had to take a good bit of polishing stones to get that smoothed off, and I'm at the point of checking for my bushing wear. So I'm checking each one of these. This is decent, I think it's fine. This one moves a little bit, but as I go up, that one is pretty big side to side. And this one. And then on the back side, a lot side to side on this one. A little bit on here. So those are the same two, the third wheel and fourth wheel on both sides. Look like they're going to need some bushings. Possibly the second wheel on this side. Possibly this one also. So I'm going to take it back apart and kind of do a tilt test. I'm sure these are going to tilt a lot because they've got quite a bit of side-to-side movement. But that's my next step. I like to do it after it's clean and after I've polished the pivots to see what my actual movement is going to be. If there's a lot of junk around the holes, you're going to see some movement, but you're not going to see it as clearly. You can see I've been working hard. I've been working hard. We've had power all day, which is a good thing, because Hurricane Helene has dumped about 10 inches of rain in our area in the last day and a half. And the rivers are still going up, and the creeks, roads are closed, trees are down. About 13,000 people don't have power, and the rivers aren't going to crest till about midnight tonight. So the Yadkin River is going to be about 14 feet above normal, and they haven't said what the Roaring River is going to be, which is the river right by my house, but it's already up out of the banks, so it's a lot of water. We have had a ton of water from this storm, and I really wasn't thinking much about this storm. It was supposed to hit through Georgia and different places, dump a lot of water. We ended up getting a lot because we were on the northeast side of the eye, so the rain bands have finally quit. The wind is still blowing hard, and we're just watching the water rise. Took a little break from the clock repair to come and check the water situation. It's still going to rise about another foot, which will put it up here into the garden. It's up about probably 6 or 8 feet already.
Keep it going.
And the Yadkin River has breached the road. This is the main road out of where we live, and the river's up high enough now that it's going across the road right there. So the road's closed, and it's still supposed to rise another foot before midnight. Hope our bridge doesn't get washed out. Here's the end of our road, the one-lane bridge. The bridge, you can kind of see those things where the bridge starts, but it's way underwater. Roaring River roars when we get these storms. That water rising up right there, I think, is the side of the bridge. It's flowing over it, no problem. Bushings are finished. I put second, third, and fourth wheel on both sides. New bushings. Cleaned out the other holes that didn't get bushings with a toothpick. Got all my pieces laid in here. These little springy lever pieces are the hardest to get in. You got to get like your time side in all the way, and this one and the second wheel in, and then start slipping in your levers for the top part. When you got them in place, I went ahead and put the little spring at the top. I'm not going to turn it and show you, but it's coming off the bottom of this one and hooking on the top. And you want the count wheel lever. You want the count wheel lever in one of the deep slots. You want this third wheel, the tab coming off of here into the cam to shut it off, and then you want the fourth wheel pin up against this part of the lever. And then when you put your plate on, your strike should shut off like it's supposed to without any adjustments needed. So let's try to put the top plate on. I did tighten up my fan also. I slid this whole arbor out and just pushed the center down tighter and then slid it back in so that it would turn like it was supposed to instead of spinning so freely. So now comes the fun part. This might go through this hole. And this has to go down through the center. That's catching on the wire. Oh boy. All these springs on there make it very hard to get it together. That guy's on the plate now. Oh boy. See, I get this piece off, it's a lot, but I'm not going to get it off. I'm going to get the ones off first. Alright, that one, put it together. Okay, got two. Put a couple things here. Start working my way up. A couple nuts on the end. Start working my way up to the top. So once you fight with it for about 30 minutes and finally get everything where you want it, that in the cam, the pin against the lever, this in the deep wheel notch of the count wheel, then you'll turn it around and find out your gong is not in place. This guy slips out all the time. This is like the hardest piece to keep together. If your movement won't go together like you want, check this because this comes out a lot. So, I got it all put together without the fan and the verge in, and then with this nut off and that one a little bit loose, I could slip the fan in and slip the verge in pretty easily. So that gives you some room to work if you leave those two pieces out until you got it all set the way you want. But anyway, now I'm going to have to open the back up and get this guy in, which is going to let that stuff in the middle all mess up again. So I'll meet you back in another half hour. Alright, this guy's in. This guy's in. These guys are all in. The wires aren't super tight yet. I'll snug them up in a little bit. You can usually take your key and put it on the front to turn your hands. So I'm testing this. This one right here has two arms that come off of it, two different directions. One lifts this arm, one lifts this arm with this J loop. So that side's going, comes around and hits the little spade shaped J loop, lifts it, lifts this up out of here, and then it would have gone off if I had it wound. So I'm going to put a couple winds on it and see what happens. And what we want is for it to strike and shut off. 1, 2. When it's striking, check and see if your little arm here is going in the middle of the teeth. You don't want it rubbing on any of the teeth, and you want it going down into the center of that and shutting off. And it's kind of over to the side of it a little bit, so I'll adjust just the end of this a tiny bit. But it did shut off. It did go into a deep groove, and this arm is in the V of the cam right there, right here. There's the cam, there's the arm coming out, it's in the V all the way down. That's good. And then my warning pin is on this wheel, and if you look under here, it's up against this other piece of a lever. So say it hadn't shut off when it was supposed to. Say it can't go deep enough into a deep slot to shut off. Instinct tells you, okay, I'm going to push it down deeper into a slot, and that's actually going to make it raise up more. Because there are 3 arms on this one cam, if you move this arm, it changes the relationship to the other 2 arms. So what you actually want to do is lift it up, and it will seat deeper. It's the opposite of what you would think. Lifting it up narrows the angles on the other arms in relation to it, and so it will go deeper when it falls down. If you lift it, if you push it down, you're actually widening that, so there's more room for it to be up in the air. You want to pull it up, narrow it, so that when it's activated, it pushes down more. Okay, so I'm just going to adjust this little arm a tiny bit so that it's not rubbing on the inside there. And I think we'll put it on the test stand for a while. Too much stuff on here. I can't even set it down. I didn't talk about this. I did have to put a new leather in the end of this thing. And that's why it's loose right now, because I don't really know where it needs to be in relation to my gong. So normally when the leather needs to be replaced, it's all dried out and it comes out pretty easily. This did not come out at all. It really did not want to come out of here. I took a screwdriver and tried to do it. There's threads inside of here like a screw, and I thought if I could get in, like kind of punch into the leather a little bit, I could unscrew it and get it out, but I couldn't. I had to drill a hole in the middle of it. I had to scrape it out. It was a pain in the butt. But anyway, I got a new piece, and it screwed in nicely, and I kind of flattened the end so it would have a good striking surface, and so that little piece is all set to go. Had some pretty deep grooves on some of the lift arms. The other one that's attached to this J loop had a pretty good groove in it, and the tip of the J was had a little sharp burr on it too, so I make sure to check all your levers before you put them in. The verge I had to work on a good bit because it had a pretty deep groove on the inside and outside of it. So polish all that up good before you put it together. Run your fingernail over it. Feel for any little grooves that can hang you up. This has been on my test stand for a couple of days. Still working through a couple of issues. I did get this where I wanted it hitting in the middle there. I made some adjustments on the J loop to get the striking straight up at the 12 o'clock. So right now it's in warning. You can see it's lifted up out of the slot. It's a couple minutes till 2, but it's not on the right spot. What it's been doing is when it goes into warning, it was right here at 1:30. When it went into warning, it went bump, 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 bump all the way over to here. So when I moved this J loop, it affects the wire that's attached to it, which is the lever that catches the warning pin right there. So I have got to bend it up more. As it lifts, it's lifting up and catching it, so I think I've got to raise it up a little more so that it catches it sooner. So that'll be what I try next. It should be going off anytime. It's been pretty accurate, but it's not. It's still a couple minutes till. So it's shutting off like it's supposed to. It's just that when it goes into warning, the warning pin is not catching on the lever. So it's running some. But then at some point it does catch. It doesn't continue to run. It just runs a few and then goes, oh wait, I'm supposed to be in warning, and catches on the little lever. So I'm going to move that lever up some. The problem with this design on this clock is that they've got so many levers on a single arbor. So everything you do affects the other ones. So when you move this J-loop, it affects the relationship, the angle between these two. So I'm going to try to hold this where it is and bend that up a little bit more, because I've got this where I want it. It's striking straight up on the hour. If I just bend that up, it's going to move that one too and make it fall off of the little arm sooner, and it'll be going off at a couple minutes till the hour like it was doing before I adjusted anything. So I'm going to hold the pliers here and bend this up. Okay, so those two wires are on that arbor, but if you follow it up, it's this second one right here. There's two arbors with levers, right? One here that we put in. They both have multiple arms on them. This is the one with the J-loop and the warning pin catcher, and the other thing that is on it is this lift arm for the count wheel. So everything that you move, it's going to move this up, it's going to move that up, like by moving that down to make it, the J-loop down to make it fall off of that little arm later and strike with the minute hand straight up. It moved the warning pin catch lever down some, so it's no longer catching, and it's going to move this down some. So it's hard to move just a single lever when there's three activating things on each one. This one has three on it also. Everything you do is going to affect the angles of the other ones. So I'm trying to hold one still and bend one up. And I won't know till it goes off the next time whether it moved it enough. If you knew you needed to adjust it, it'd be easy to do with it all apart. But with it all together, it's a tight space. So it'll stay on the test stand till I get it right. We're still on the test stand. I've tried different things that I showed you before with, get a pointer, with bending the J-loop out. Right now it's in warning. So the little spade-shaped end of that J-loop, whoop, there you are. The little spade-shaped end of the J-loop is being lifted up on the bar. And then I've tried bending that out some so that it falls off later, which raised this up, made it miss the warning pin. So then I had to bend that where it would catch the warning pin. So the third arm that's on that same arbor is this lift arm right here. It's lifting up the count wheel lever. So I tried bending that up a little bit. I bent it up too much at first and it wasn't going down enough to shut off. I bent it down just a little bit and then it was going off right at the hour. So I'm just letting it run and making sure it's still going off right at the hour. And if you push it, it goes off before the hour because your momentum is different. So I'm just letting it run and set itself off. So I will turn the camera back on when it gets closer. I just wanted you to see how high it's lifting it up out of the count wheel now. Pretty high up there. It's hard to see with the post right there. That's one flaw in the design of this. I'm going to have to be off to the side a little bit. But I can pretty much get it straight up and down. But it's not 9 o'clock. That clock's 2 minutes fast. Now if you've bent this too far up, this lift lever, it's going to put a bind. It's separated the angle of the J-loop piece and this piece, and if you've got it at a separated far enough angle, this can't lift up high enough. It puts it all in a bind against the lever that's trying to turn on the arbor and lift that J-loop, So it'll stop your clock. Your spring won't be able to overcome the force if you've lifted it too high. So, looking pretty straight up and down. Maybe a minute till. That's probably as close as I'm going to be able to get it. And anytime you make adjustments, double check and make sure that your count wheel lever is not hitting on the sides of your teeth. You don't want it rubbing on that over time. That'll wear a groove into your lever. If you're having trouble getting this to lift up high enough, I would suggest you take this and just bend it to the inside. It's easy to push it in a little bit, and this little piece of the lever won't be caught in the teeth. It'll be between these two rows of teeth, and then you can make adjustments without it bending the end of this. I have had it hang up enough times as I was making adjustments, and it would bend it out slowly, and I would bend it back to the point where I broke the end of it off and had to smash a new end on one of these that was on a kitchen clock movement. It's the same kind of setup. They both have the two arbors with 3 arms on each thing. When the clock is not in warning, there should be a gap between the lift lever and the count wheel lever. There should be a little space in there. It shouldn't be up against it. One last adjustment I made. May have made it the wrong direction. It looks like it's even earlier than it was. Yeah. Although when it gets done, it's pretty much straight up. I don't know. Anyway, I'll show you what other adjustment I made. So this is the last place to try to adjust your minute hand. If you turn your minute hand, that's the one that makes the bell ding. The one coming this way makes the hour hand strike. You can bend it away to make it strike later, or up to closer to the J to make it fall off of there sooner. So if you can put something in there to keep the wheels from turning, I don't know what. I'm just going to hold the hands, I think. Put my little wire bender on there and adjust. It's hard to get a hold of. Because it just wants to slide back off. That's the only one I've got that'll fit on it. The rest are smaller, and that one's too big, it just lets it slip. So I'm moving it a hair, not much. Oh, you've got a big pole in your way. So So that's about as straight up as I can get. So I'm going to leave it on here a little while longer and make sure it's where I want it, and be about ready to put it back in the case. I've showed you all the different places you can adjust to get this minute hand working. There's about 4 different places. The only reason I'm having to mess with this at all, notice the half hour goes off right on time. But the hour doesn't, because when I got this clock and took the moving out and cleaned it, it was so black you couldn't even see what was what. It was just covered with like black coal soot. And so after I cleaned it and I had it on my test stand, I did not have a stand like this. I had my cuckoo clock stand, and it didn't hold it real securely. I had it on there. I had adjusted my pendulum bob and everything, had it the way I wanted it, was ready to put it back in the clock, and bumped it, and it fell 2 to 3 feet from the height it was on onto the floor. My verge was bent straight up in the air. My suspension spring went who knows where. It disappeared. And so I readjusted everything as best I could, and it's been that way for a year. But now that the clock's not been running like it should, and I had to take it apart and do the bushings and everything, I thought now is the time to get this hour hand the way I want it, because I don't want it going off at a couple minutes till. So it should be going off right there. So I'm going to be happy with that. I think I've got it about where it used to be before I misaligned everything so badly. So I'm ready to finish up and get this clock back in the case. It's been on this movement stand for about 2 weeks. I've watched everything. I did end up having to adjust this J loop, and that's what I was trying to catch on video. Was I put a little black Sharpie line right in the middle so I could see where the hand came up, because it's really hard to tell with this post in the way where your hand is. And then this J loop is probably the hardest thing to try to adjust on all the things. You really don't want to change the angle of the J by bending the tip of it down or up. You might get away with tipping it up if you need it to go off sooner. If it's going off a couple minutes late and you tip it up, it'll fall off of this little arm inside on the arbor sooner. So it might set it for the right time. But the problem with this is that this is really hard to adjust. The tip of that is angled right there. So any adjustments you make is not one-dimensional. Had to put a dog up. Sorry, I'm back. So it's not one-dimensional. When you bend this out, it's going to fall off closer to the tip here. It's real easy to angle this J when you're bending it. So it took me probably 6 hours by adjusting the J to get it to go where I wanted it. That's definitely the hardest thing right there to adjust. So every time I'd adjust this, I'd have to adjust this. And the reason I had to adjust the J was when I was turning this minute hand by hand, I thought it felt a little harder to push as I got about 10 minutes till and it would go into warning. So I pushed it around and let it just run by itself and watched it slowly tick slower and slower and slower. And it did stop a few minutes before the hour. It was too much pressure. So with the J bent down that way, out too far, it put enough pressure that the arbor little arm could not lift this. So that meant I needed to bend it back up, and that meant multiple adjustments that I made. So I did not record all that. Just know it was like 6 hours, and then I left it on the stand forever because life got busy. But now I'm ready to put it back in the case, and we'll finish up this clock. We'll see if it goes off on time when it's in the case, because that's another thing. Just went off. Looks pretty close to me. So anyway, thanks for watching, guys. I hope you enjoyed this video. This clock, I feel like, came out pretty good. Case came out nice. Movement's all set up now. A lot of enjoyment for years to come. Thanks for watching.